You are listening to the best audio story of 2026. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and watch until the end so you don't miss the ending that will leave everyone stunned. He went to fix his mother-in-law's sink, but the security camera revealed the real reason. Emily Parker used to believe small kindnesses were proof of love. A cup of coffee made before she woke up, a hand resting on her back in a crowded room, a husband offering to help her mother when she was too busy to go herself. That was why, when Daniel said he would drive over to Margaret's house and fix the leaking kitchen sink, Emily kissed his cheek and thanked him. She did not suspect anything, not then. It was a Wednesday afternoon, grey and wet, the kind of day that made the Denver suburbs look washed, clean, and tired at the same time. Emily was at work, trapped in a conference room with a broken projector and a donor presentation due by 5. Her phone buzzed beside her notebook. "Mom." Emily stepped into the hallway and answered. "Mom, everything okay?" Margaret Reed sighed dramatically on the other end. "Not an emergency, sweetheart. Just inconvenient. The kitchen sink is leaking again." "Again?" "I know. Your stepfather swore he fixed it last month, but apparently the pipe disagrees." Emily rubbed her forehead. "I can come after work." No, you're busy. I can stop by around 6. "Don't worry about it. I'll put a bowl underneath." Emily glanced toward the conference room. Her co-worker was waving her back inside. "I'll call Daniel," Emily said. "He's probably closer." Margaret paused, only for a second. "Are you sure?" "Of course. He's good with this stuff." Margaret's voice softened. "He is." Emily did not notice the warmth in those 2 words. She called Daniel next. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, are you busy?" "Finishing up at the warehouse. Why?" "Mom's sink is leaking again. I'm stuck at work. Could you maybe swing by and take a look?" There was a brief silence. Then Daniel said, "Yeah, sure. I'll grab my toolbox." Emily smiled with relief. "Thank you, seriously." "No problem. You're a good son-in-law." He gave a small laugh, but it sounded thin. "Yeah," he said. "I'll let you know when it's fixed." Emily returned to her meeting, feeling grateful. That was what hurt later. The gratitude. She pictured Daniel walking into Margaret's kitchen with his toolbox, rolling up his sleeves, kneeling under the sink, tightening some pipe she could not name. She pictured her mother hovering nearby, offering unnecessary advice and sweet tea. She pictured a normal family favor. By 6 o'clock, Daniel texted. "Daniel, all fixed. Leak was worse than I thought. Heading home soon." Emily replied. "Emily, thank you." Mom would flood the whole kitchen before asking a plumber. He sent back a laughing emoji. That night, when he came home, he placed his toolbox by the garage door. His hair was damp from the rain, his shirt untucked, his expression tired. "How bad was the leak?" Emily asked, while stirring soup on the stove. "Bad enough," he said. "Did you replace anything?" "A washer. Tighten the pipe too." Emily nodded. "Mom okay?" "She's fine." He said it quickly. Too quickly? Maybe, but Emily did not catch it. She ladled soup into bowls and thought, again, that little acts of kindness mattered. She did not know that Daniel had never opened a toolbox. She did not know that Margaret's sink had never leaked. And she did not know that the camera in her mother's hallway had recorded everything. Daniel Parker had not grown up with warmth. That was what Emily told herself whenever she excused his emotional distance. His childhood had been clean and cold, like a house staged for sale. His parents divorced when he was 11, each remarrying into new lives where Daniel was welcome, but never central. He learned early to be useful. Useful children cause fewer problems. He fixed things, stayed quiet, got good grades, learned how to read rooms, learned how not to ask for too much. When Emily brought him home to Margaret and Robert Reed, he seemed almost suspicious of kindness. Margaret noticed. She always noticed wounded people. At Daniel's first Sunday dinner, she placed an extra serving of roast potatoes on his plate and said, "You're too thin. Emily feeds people emotionally. I feed them properly." Daniel smiled, unsure if he was being teased. Robert clapped him on the shoulder and handed him a beer. "Come outside after dinner. I'll show you the grill. Every man needs one place in life where he can pretend he's in charge." Daniel laughed. Emily loved that sound. Her family wrapped around him slowly. Not forcefully. Naturally. Robert asked for his help fixing a fence latch. Margaret asked him what kind of pie he liked. Emily's cousins included him in jokes. At Christmas, Margaret gave him a stocking with his name stitched on it. Daniel stared at it for a long time. "I've never had one of these," he said. Emily squeezed his hand. You do now. When they married, Margaret cried during the ceremony, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. At the reception, Robert toasted them. Daniel came into this family as Emily's husband, he said, raising his glass, but he leaves tonight as our son. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Emily thought love had finally given him a place to belong. For years, Daniel was grateful. Then gratitude became dependence. Dependence became secrecy. And secrecy became something unforgivable. It began with repairs, a loose cabinet hinge, a garage light that flickered, a leaking outdoor faucet, a broken pantry shelf, a sink that acted up whenever Margaret said it did. At first, Emily found it sweet. Daniel wanted to help. Margaret trusted him. Robert's niece bothered him after his heart scare, and Daniel was younger, stronger, useful. Useful. The word should have warned Emily. Daniel had spent his whole life earning affection through usefulness. Margaret knew how to praise it. You are a lifesaver, she would say. I don't know what we'd do without you. Emily is lucky to have a man who shows up. Those sentences entered Daniel like water into dry soil. Emily did not see it. She only saw her husband becoming part of her family. Margaret's attention changed slowly. She began calling Daniel directly instead of calling Emily. Your mom needs me to look at the garage door, Daniel would say. Again? She says it's sticking. Emily would laugh. At this point, you should send her an invoice. He smiled, but his eyes flickered. One Saturday, Emily arrived at Margaret's house early and found Daniel already there. His toolbox sat by the hallway. Margaret stood near him in the kitchen, laughing softly at something he had said. When Emily entered, both of them became quiet too fast. Hey, Daniel said. Emily looked from him to Margaret. I thought we were meeting at noon. Margaret picked up a dish towel and began wiping an already clean counter. Daniel came early to fix the pantry shelf. Emily glanced toward the pantry. The shelf looked fine, but she pushed the thought away. Suspicion felt ugly when aimed at people you loved. Later that night, she asked Daniel, Did Mom call you directly about the shelf? He shrugged. She texts me when something breaks. Maybe she should text me first. Why? I don't know. It just feels like she calls you a lot. Daniel's expression hardened. I thought you liked that I help your family. I do. Then why make it weird? Emily backed down. I'm not. But something had become weird. She just did not have a name for it yet. Margaret had her own loneliness. It did not excuse anything, but it was part of the road that led to betrayal. Robert was a good man. Loyal, steady, kind. But after his heart scare, he became careful. He moved slower. He went to bed earlier. He avoided stress. He loved Margaret, but their marriage had softened into routine. Pills, appointments, grocery lists, quiet dinners, television at low volume. Margaret missed being seen as a woman. She hated herself for it. At 56, she was still elegant. She still turned heads at church luncheons and family gatherings. But inside her home, she felt like a manager of life, not a desired participant in it. Then Daniel looked at her differently. At first, she told herself it was because he needed motherly warmth. Then she told herself she was only helping him through marriage trouble. Then one afternoon, while Daniel repaired a garage shelf that did not truly need repairing, he said, You make me feel like I'm not failing all the time. Margaret should have stepped back. Instead, she asked, Does Emily make you feel that way? He looked down. She makes me feel measured. Margaret's heart tightened. Emily loves you. I know. But? He looked at her. Sometimes knowing isn't the same as feeling. That sentence should have stayed between a husband and wife. Instead, Margaret held it, protected it, fed it. Soon, Daniel was not only fixing things, he was confiding. Emily is always tired. Emily thinks I'm not trying. Emily talks to me like a project. I feel like I disappoint everyone. Margaret listened, and slowly, dangerously, she began to enjoy being the person who understood him better than her daughter did. The first kiss happened in Margaret's laundry room after Daniel fixed the dryer vent. It was raining. Robert was at a cardiology appointment. Daniel had been crying quietly, ashamed after another fight with Emily. Margaret touched his arm and said, You are not as hard to love as you think. He looked at her. Then why does it feel like everyone gets tired of trying? I'm not tired. The words crossed a line before their bodies did. Daniel kissed her. Margaret pushed him away. Then she pulled him back. Afterward, she cried. We can never do that again, she said. Daniel nodded. They did it again 5 days later. Emily's mother had shared access to her home security system months earlier. It was practical. Margaret hated dealing with apps. Robert sometimes missed doorbell alerts. Emily lived nearby and could check deliveries, strange motion alerts, or whether Margaret left the garage open. The system had cameras at the front porch, garage, and hallway near the side door. Emily rarely checked them. Until the sink. The first alert came at 3:41 p.m., while Daniel was supposedly fixing the leak. Emily was still at work. Her phone buzzed with the notification from Margaret's security app. Motion detected. Side hallway. Emily almost ignored it. Then curiosity nudged her. She opened the clip. The hallway camera showed Daniel entering through the side door with his toolbox. He looked around once, then set the toolbox down against the wall. Margaret appeared from the living room. Emily expected her mother to point toward the kitchen. Instead, Margaret stepped close and wrapped both arms around Daniel. Not a quick thank you hug, not a motherly embrace. She held him. Daniel closed his eyes and buried his face briefly against her shoulder. Emily's fingers went cold. Then Margaret took his hand. They walked past the kitchen entrance. Away from the sink. The clip ended. Emily stared at the screen. A second clip loaded. Daniel and Margaret crossed the hallway again nearly an hour later. Daniel's shirt was untucked. Margaret's hair was different. The toolbox still sat unopened by the wall. Emily's mouth went dry. She replayed the first clip, then the second, then she checked the time. Daniel had been at Margaret's house for almost 3 hours. No footage showed him entering the kitchen with tools. No footage showed him kneeling near the sink. No footage showed the toolbox being opened. When Daniel later texted that the leak had been worse than I thought, Emily stared at the message as if it had been written by a stranger. That night, when he came home, she asked, "Did you have to replace anything?" He said, "A washer." She looked at the toolbox by the garage door. "Where was the leak?" "Under the sink." "Mom said the cabinet under the sink is cramped." "It was." Emily nodded. But she had seen him walk away from the kitchen, and she had seen him set down the toolbox like a prop. She did not confront him that night. Shock made her quiet. The next morning, after Daniel left for work, Emily drove to Margaret's house. Margaret opened the door in a pale sweater and pearls. "Sweetheart," she said, smiling too brightly. What a surprise. Emily looked past her toward the kitchen. "How's the sink?" Margaret blinked. "The sink?" "The leak." "Oh." Margaret laughed lightly. "Much better. Daniel fixed it beautifully." "What was wrong with it?" Margaret's fingers tightened on the door. "Just a drip." Daniel said it was worse than he thought. "Well, men like to make repairs sound dramatic." Emily walked into the kitchen. Margaret followed. Emily opened a cabinet under the sink. Dry. Clean. No damp towels. No replaced parts. No tools. No evidence of repair. "Where did it leak?" Emily asked. Margaret stood behind her. "Emily, what is this?" Emily stood slowly. "You tell me." Margaret's face changed. Only for a moment, but Emily saw it. Fear. Not confusion. Fear. "Daniel came to help me," Margaret said. "With what?" "The sink. He never touched the sink." Margaret went pale. Emily almost said, "I saw the camera," but she stopped herself. Not yet. She needed to know whether there was more. So she said only, "I have to go." Margaret reached for her. "Emily." Emily stepped back. "Don't." The word surprised them both. Then Emily left. The truth expanded in pieces. That was how betrayal worked. It rarely arrived whole. It came like broken glass, one sharp piece at a time. Emily checked older security clips. There were more. Daniel arriving with a toolbox on a Thursday morning when Margaret said the bathroom faucet was loose. Daniel leaving 2 hours later, toolbox still closed. Daniel parking around the corner, entering through the side door. Margaret opening the door before he knocked. Margaret touching his face in the hallway. Daniel kissing her hand. Another clip showed them arguing quietly near the garage entrance. The audio was faint, but clear enough. Margaret whispered, "Robert is starting to notice how often you come over." Daniel said, "Then stop inventing repairs." Margaret answered, "You know I can't." Emily felt sick. She downloaded everything. Then she checked the old tablet Daniel used in the kitchen for recipes and videos. His messages still synced there sometimes. Margaret's name was not in the conversations, but M.R. Plumbing was. Emily's heart pounded as she opened it. At first, the messages were practical. "Margaret, can you stop by tomorrow? The sink is acting up again." "Daniel, Emily's at work until 6. I can come at 3. Then, "Margaret, bring the toolbox so it looks normal." Emily pressed a hand to her mouth. "Daniel, Emily, trust me when I say I'm helping you." Another. "Daniel, I hate sneaking around, but I can't stay away from you." "Margaret, we have to be careful. Robert is starting to notice how often you come over. Emily scrolled. Margaret, last time, you forgot the toolbox in the hallway. If Emily checks the camera, she'll know we never went near the sink. The room blurred. There it was. The sink was fake. The toolbox was fake. The helpful son-in-law was fake. Or worse, the helpfulness had been real once, then turned into a mask. Emily set the tablet down carefully. She walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, and watched water run cleanly into the drain. Then she bent over and sobbed. I thought my husband was helping my mother, she whispered. I never imagined they were helping each other lie to me. The confrontation happened that evening. Emily waited until Daniel came home. She had moved the toolbox from the garage and placed it in the center of the living room floor. The television was on, connected to her phone. Daniel stepped through the door and saw the toolbox first, then Emily, then the frozen security camera image on the screen. His face drained. Emily. She pressed play. The footage showed Daniel entering Margaret's house, carrying the toolbox. He set it down unopened. Margaret appeared. She embraced him. They walked away from the kitchen. The clip ended. Emily played the second clip, then the third. Then the hallway argument where Margaret said Robert was noticing. Daniel stood motionless. Emily picked up the toolbox and set it on the coffee table between them. You said you went to fix her sink, she said. The camera showed me you never even entered the kitchen. Daniel closed his eyes. I can explain. No, Emily said. You can confess. His shoulders dropped. She read from the printed messages. Bring the toolbox so it looks normal. Daniel covered his face. Emily continued. Emily, trust me when I say I'm helping you. Her voice broke on her own name. Daniel began crying. It started because I felt like I couldn't talk to you. So you talked to my mother. She listened. Emily laughed once, sharp and broken. She listened because I was going to her crying about you. He flinched. Emily stepped closer. You turned every toolbox, every errand, every favor into a hiding place for betrayal. Daniel wiped his face. I never meant for it to become this. That sentence insults every choice after the first one. He lowered his head. How long? She asked. 3 months. Physical? Silence. Emily stared at him. Do not make me ask twice. Yes, he whispered. The word entered the room like smoke. Emily looked at the toolbox. For years, she had seen Daniel's toolbox as something comforting, a symbol of his usefulness, his steadiness, his willingness to show up. Now it looked like a suitcase for lies. My family opened the door for you, she said. You used that door to walk into the one place I never thought betrayal could hide. Daniel reached toward her. She stepped back. Don't touch me. I'm sorry. No. You are caught, he cried harder. Emily pointed toward the stairs. Pack a bag. Emily, please. Pack a bag. You don't have to decide tonight. I decided when I saw you carry a prop into my mother's house. Daniel looked at the toolbox as if seeing it for the first time. Then he went upstairs. Emily stood alone in the living room, with the camera footage frozen behind her, the toolbox on the table, and the life she had trusted breaking quietly around her. Margaret opened the door before Emily knocked the next morning. She knew. Maybe Daniel had called her. Maybe guilt had warned her. Maybe mothers still knew when daughters were coming with heartbreak, even when they caused it. Margaret looked smaller than usual. No lipstick. No pearls. Her hair pulled back carelessly. She wore a grey sweater, one hand gripping the doorframe. Emily? She whispered. Emily placed Daniel's toolbox on the porch between them. Margaret looked down at it and began crying. Emily stepped inside. The hallway looked exactly like it did in the footage. The side door. The narrow table. The camera mounted near the ceiling. The place where Daniel set down the toolbox. The place where Margaret embraced him. Emily played the clip on her phone. The sound was low, but the image was clear. Daniel entering. Toolbox down. Margaret's arms around him. Away from the kitchen. Margaret sobbed. Emily stopped the video. You called my husband to fix your house while you were helping destroy mine. Margaret covered her mouth. I never meant to hurt you. Emily's eyes hardened. You meant to hide it? Margaret sank into a chair near the hallway. It started as helping him. Emily shook her head. Do not insult me with that. He was hurting. I was hurting. Margaret flinched. You knew that, Emily said. You knew because I told you. I came to you with my marriage falling apart, and you were the reason it was falling apart. Margaret cried silently. Emily continued. You were supposed to be my safe place. I know. No, Emily said. You were supposed to know before you did it. Margaret looked up, broken. I felt lonely. Robert and I had become distant. Daniel made me feel needed, wanted. My husband made you feel wanted. Margaret closed her eyes. Emily's voice cracked. Being my mother should have stopped you before desire ever became betrayal. Margaret whispered, It should have. That was the first honest answer. Emily looked toward the kitchen. Was the sink ever leaking? Margaret shook her head. Emily nodded slowly. Of course. The sink had never needed fixing. The house had not been broken. The people inside it were. Robert deserved to know, Emily said. Margaret went pale. Please let me tell him. No, Emily. You do not get to manage the truth after managing the lie. Margaret bowed her head. Emily picked up the toolbox and walked toward the door. Keep your house, she said. I'm done letting it be called home. Robert watched the footage in silence. Emily had asked him to come to her house that afternoon. He arrived with a bag of groceries because that was Robert's love language. Soup ingredients, oranges, bread, practical things. You sounded bad on the phone, he said. I brought food. Emily almost broke right there. Instead, she led him to the living room. Daniel sat on one side of the room, pale and hollow. Margaret sat on the other, crying quietly. Emily stood near the television. Robert looked from one face to another. What happened? Emily pressed play. The footage showed Daniel entering Margaret's house with the toolbox. Setting it down. Margaret embracing him, both walking away from the kitchen. Robert's expression changed slowly. Confusion. 公想. Then understanding. Emily played the message screenshot next. Bring the toolbox so it looks normal. Robert's hand began to shake. He turned to Daniel. I gave you the garage code. Daniel lowered his head. I know. I gave it to you because I thought you were family. Daniel whispered. I'm sorry. Robert looked at Margaret. You didn't only let him into our house. You let him help destroy our family inside it. Margaret sobbed. Robert stepped back. His voice cracked. I trusted both of you. No one answered. What answer could there be? Robert turned toward the door. Margaret stood. Robert, please. He shook his head. Don't follow me. He left. The groceries remained on the coffee table. A bag of oranges rolled onto its side. Emily stared at them for a long time after he was gone. There was something unbearable about ordinary kindness, sitting beside extraordinary betrayal. The family dinner happened 2 weeks later, not because Emily wanted drama, but because Margaret still wanted control. Relatives were asking questions. Robert had moved out. Daniel was staying in a short-term rental. Emily had stopped attending Sunday dinners. Margaret called and said, Not everyone needs to know. Emily replied, You mean not everyone needs to know what you did? Please, Margaret said. Think of the family. I did. That's why I'm done protecting the people who destroyed it. A birthday dinner for Robert had already been planned months earlier. Emily went. Daniel came because Emily told him hiding was no longer an option. Margaret came because she was still trying to perform dignity. Robert came because he refused to let shame exile him from his own life. The dinner was tense from the beginning. Aunt Caroline asked if everyone was okay. No one answered clearly. Margaret tried to speak before dessert. I know this family has been through a painful time, she began, hands clasped. But healing requires compassion, privacy, and restraint. Emily stood. No. The room went silent. She placed Daniel's toolbox in the center of the dining table. Then she turned on the television and played the security footage. Everyone watched. Daniel entering with the toolbox, setting it down. Margaret embracing him, both leaving the kitchen untouched. Aunt Caroline gasped. Someone whispered, Oh my God. Emily read the message aloud. Bring the toolbox so it looks normal. Daniel stared at the table. Margaret broke down. Robert closed his eyes. Emily looked at them both. You both forgot the camera was watching what Trust refused to question. No one spoke. She turned to Daniel. You did not fall into this. You walked into it every time you carried that toolbox through her door. Then she turned to Margaret. You were supposed to be my mother. Instead, you made your home the place my marriage was broken. Margaret cried into her hands. No one ate dessert. The dinner ended the way many families end after truth arrives. Not with shouting, but with people leaving quietly, because silence is the only thing left that does not feel false. The aftermath was not dramatic. It was worse. It was paperwork, empty rooms, unanswered calls, and grief that kept changing shape. Daniel moved out fully within a week. Emily filed for divorce. Robert separated from Margaret and rented a small apartment near the park. Family gatherings stopped. Margaret wrote Emily a letter. Emily ignored it for days. Then read it late one night. My daughter, I became the danger I taught you to avoid. I told myself I was helping Daniel because admitting I wanted him would have forced me to stop. I used broken sinks and loose cabinets and small repairs to create chances for betrayal. You were right. Being your mother should have stopped me. It did not. That failure belongs to me, Emily cried, not because the apology repaired anything, because it finally named the truth. Daniel's letter came too. Emily, I turned helpfulness into a hiding place. I used your family's trust, Robert's kindness, and your mother's attention to escape my own shame. I chose secrecy over honesty every time I carried that toolbox into her house. I am sorry. I will not fight you for peace. Emily folded both letters and placed them in a drawer. Regret mattered, but regret did not rebuild what betrayal had chosen to break. Therapy helped Emily survive the humiliation. At first, she could barely say it. My husband had an affair with my mother. The sentence sounded too ugly to belong to real life. Her therapist did not flinch. That helped. What do you blame yourself for? Dr. Lane asked. Emily stared at the floor. Trusting them. Trusting your husband and mother is not failure, Dr. Lane said. Those are people who were supposed to be safe, Emily cried. Those are people who were supposed to be safe. The sentence became something she carried. The shame belonged to Daniel and Margaret, not to Emily, not to the wife who believed her husband was fixing a sink, not to the daughter who believed her mother's house was still a refuge. Robert became part of her healing too. They had dinner once a week at his apartment. He cooked simple meals and burned garlic bread more often than he admitted. Emily ate it anyway. One night she asked, Do you still love her? Robert looked into his coffee. Yes. Then why not go back? He looked at her gently. Love does not always mean access. Emily remembered that. She still loved Margaret in some broken, painful place. But love did not mean access. Love did not mean trust. Love did not mean returning to a house where betrayal had been recorded in the hallway. Months later, Daniel asked to meet. Emily agreed because the divorce was nearly final, and because she wanted one conversation that did not involve lawyers. They met in a quiet park. Daniel looked thinner, older, less like the man her family once praised. I ended all contact with Margaret, he said. That should have happened before it began. I know. Do you? He nodded slowly. I know enough to understand that knowing will never equal what you live through. That answer surprised her. It was not an excuse. He continued. I confused being understood with being loved. I liked feeling needed. I chose that feeling over honesty, over you, over the family that trusted me. Emily looked away. Was it worth it? His eyes filled. No. Then why? Because selfishness doesn't ask the price until after it spends everything. The answer hurt because it sounded true. Too late, but true. Is there any chance someday? He asked. No. He lowered his head. I may forgive you one day, Emily said, but I cannot return to a marriage where every act of help became a lie. I understand. No, she said softly. You accept it. Understanding belongs to the wounded person. She left him there by the path. It did not feel like victory. It felt like choosing herself with shaking hands. Margaret took longer. A mother cannot be divorced in court. There is no legal document that ends childhood memories, fever nights, kitchen table comfort, and the memory of believing one person would always protect you. Emily avoided her for nearly 2 years. Then she agreed to meet in a public garden. Not Margaret's house. Never there. Margaret looked smaller, still elegant but dimmed. No jewelry, no bright lipstick, no attempt to control the scene. She did not try to hug Emily. Good. They sat on a bench with space between them. Emily spoke first. Tell me the truth, without making yourself sound tragic. Margaret closed her eyes. It was mine. Emily had expected loneliness. Not that. Margaret continued. I felt old, invisible. Robert was recovering. I became caretaker, hostess, mother, wife, everything except desired. Daniel made me feel wanted. I let that matter more than being your mother. Emily's throat tightened. That is ugly. Yes. At least it sounds true. It is. Did you love him? Margaret shook her head, tears falling. No. I loved how I felt when he wanted me. That is worse. It is. Margaret accepted the words. Emily looked toward the garden path. You caught my husband to fix your sink. Margaret covered her mouth. I know. And the sink was never broken. I know. You let me thank him. Margaret sobbed. Emily stood. I may forgive you someday, but you will never again be my safe place. Margaret nodded through tears. I understand. You accept it, Emily said. Understanding may come later. Then Emily walked away. It was not reconciliation, but it was release. Some conversations do not rebuild the bridge. They simply let you stop standing beside the ruins. A year after the divorce finalized, Emily moved into a smaller house across town. It had less space, fewer memories, and a kitchen cabinet with a loose handle. For 3 weeks, she ignored it. Every time she touched it, the handle shifted slightly, and she thought of Daniel's toolbox, Margaret's hallway, the security footage, the sink that was never broken. Then one Saturday morning, Emily bought a small toolbox of her own. Nothing fancy. A hammer, screwdrivers, pliers, a tape measure, a small wrench. She placed it on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a while. Then she laughed softly at herself. "It's a cabinet handle," she said aloud, "not a ghost." She opened the toolbox, chose a screwdriver, and tightened the screws. It took less than 5 minutes. When she was done, she pulled the handle. Firm. Fixed. The satisfaction that moved through her was small but real. She closed the toolbox and ran her hand over the lid. For a long time, the toolbox had meant lies. Now it meant something else. Not betrayal. Repair. Her own repair. That evening, Robert came over for dinner. He brought bread. Emily made pasta. The cabinet handle stayed firm every time she opened the door. Robert noticed the toolbox on the counter. "You fixing things now?" Emily smiled. "Apparently." He grinned. "Need a job?" "No, but I charge less than Daniel." They both froze for half a second. Then Robert laughed. Emily did too. The laugh surprised her, warm and sudden. For the first time, Daniel's name did not ruin the room. That felt like healing. Some betrayals hide behind ordinary favors. A toolbox, a leaking sink, a quick repair, a husband saying, "I'll take care of it." These can all look like kindness when trust is still alive. But when the camera shows the truth, even the smallest excuse can expose the largest betrayal. Sometimes the person who claims he came to fix something is the one helping break everything beyond repair. Emily had learned that through grainy footage and a toolbox left unopened in a hallway. She had watched kindness become cover. She had watched her mother's house turn from refuge into evidence. For a while, she thought the betrayal had broken everything permanently. Then she learned the difference between broken and ruined. Broken things can sometimes be repaired, not always into what they were, sometimes into something smaller, quieter, stronger. Daniel and Margaret had broken the life Emily trusted, but it had not ruined her. That evening, after Robert left, Emily stood in her kitchen and opened the cabinet one more time. The handle held. She smiled faintly. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Inside, there were no secret messages, no fake repairs, no camera clips waiting to be discovered. Just a woman in her own house, a small toolbox on the counter, and the first honest repair of a life that belonged fully to her again.